What are some of the things that you're afraid of?
I'm not afraid of a whole lot of things, but I do not like insects. Not all of them. Like some are fine, but for some reason, bugs creep me out.
Spiders?
Yes. But I don't kill them. I let them live if I can. I don't try and kill bugs. I just let them be. The other thing that really gets me is tight spaces. I do not like being enclosed in tight spaces. I start getting like a panic attack.
Do you remember like the first thing you were ever afraid of or that you felt fear from?
I've always been afraid of spiders, so maybe that.
I remember always being afraid of the dark whenever I was little. And then it was ghosts and then dogs in that order.
I've never really been afraid of the dark. I do have a fear of water. I don't know if it's because maybe when I was a kid, one of my cousins tried to drown me. And ever since then, I've been afraid of being in public pools because the amount of people around there start to give me anxiety because I think someone's going to grab me and try and drown me.
That's a valid fear. Surviving a drowning and being afraid of water, I think that's rational.
I don't think they were actually intentionally drowning me. They just kept pushing me underwater, and every time I try and get up, they kept pushing me under. They thought they were playing, but they were a lot bigger than me, and no, I didn't find it fun. Gasping for breath as I keep getting held underwater.
So we're both horror movie fans.
Yes.
So what draws you to those type films?
I've always been interested in them. Honestly, some of the first movies that I really, really got into on the horror side were the original Night of the Living Dead. I watched it when I was probably about 11 or 12. It'd come on TV one night, and I was watching the old black and white version of it. And about that time, there was a game that came out on the PlayStation, and it scared the living bejesus out of me. We all used to sit around and watch each other play it, and these dogs come bursting out of windows. That was the first time I'd ever jumped from a video game. That was Resident Evil.
Yeah, I remember whenever that game came out. It did have a lot of jump scares in it.
I'd never experienced a game like that before that had ever made me actually afraid to play. And that was the first game that ever drew me in that I really wanted to play it, but I was too afraid to play it.
I just always remember being into horror movies the most. I was always wanting to see those. I even wanted to be a special effects like makeup artist whenever I was a kid. Obviously that didn't pan out, but I remember seeing, like Jaws very early on.
Mm-hmm.
And then whenever I was probably in junior high, I was staying over at my cousin's house, and I stayed up watching cable television because at my house we didn't have cable television, and he did. He had already gone to bed, and like he had bunk beds. And I stayed in the living room watching television, and Hellraiser was on. And there was some scene, I don't remember what it was, but it was getting really intense, and my muscles are tightening up, and I'm sitting there by myself watching it. And right as the main, jump scare happened, the power in his house went out. And I was just in complete darkness by myself in the living room. And as soon as I realized what was going on and my heart started beating again, I just hightailed it for his room and slammed into the bunk bed. And he was like, "What's going on?" And I was like, "I don't know, man. They got me." I was so scared. I thought something had really got me out of the movie. I still went back. I've just always been drawn to the horror stuff and the scary stuff and the monsters and the ghosts and all the unexplained things out there. Got to talking to you, and you're into a lot of the same stuff as me.
I started out obsessed with monster movies, like giant monsters. I love the old classics, the Universal monsters. Creature from the Black Lagoon's always been my all-time favorite Universal movie. I always felt bad for the creature. I always felt bad for the monsters. I never wanted the people to win. I don't know if that has shaped me to where I am today, but I've always been the one that rooted for the monster. And as I've gotten older, I still feel that way sometimes. There's certain aspects to those types of movies, though, that I think play into what interests me now, because the first real modernized horror movie, if you consider it a horror movie, that I really liked as a kid was Scream. Like Night of the Living Dead and then Scream. And I don't know what it was, but like it just drew me in. Now, Jaws was a movie that terrified me as a kid. I didn't find the movie scary in the sense that it's a big horror movie, but it's more of a real movie to me. Like the horror of that is real.
Yeah.
It's not, you don't know who's going to come knock on your door. I don't expect a shark to come knocking and open the door and takes a chomp out of me.
You never know.
It could be a street shark.
It's not just horror movies and, things that go bump in the night, but it's also true crime. It's also the real monsters, the serial killers.
That's where I was going with, like with Scream. I think that opened up the doorway for my interest in like the real stuff, because that movie was influenced from other movies of how these people became that way. And it's drawn my interest because how many people modernized use movies or something as an excuse? And I don't know if there's really people out there that do that or not, but a lot of the stuff that happens in true crime is actually worse than what you see in the movies.
Oh, by far. And Scream is an interesting example, because it gets lumped in with like slasher films, of course, but at its heart, it's not the same as those. It's actually kind of a serial killer story. I mean, it is a serial killer story in a way.
For me, it changed the whole genre, at least. And there's a lot of carbon copies, but it influenced a lot of modernized horror too. And I don't know if it influenced people to appreciate it more, because I've went back and I appreciate the classics. I appreciate other things that draw fear in. But for me, there's something about that movie that when I watch it, I feel like a kid again, if that makes any sort of sense. Like it brings back all those memories of watching this for the first time. Now, there was plenty of sequels, and I'm not a huge fan of all the sequels, but that first one, there was just something about it. And I've watched the original Halloween. I've got all the Friday the 13th and the Nightmare on Elm Street. They're all great movies, but maybe it's sacrilegious, but I hold Scream as that movie for me that was like my gateway to modernized horror.
Whenever it comes to all of these subjects, the one common denominator is fear. They are things that people are afraid of, they fear the most, and fear is one of the main emotions that drives people and influences their decisions and everything they do whenever you really start to think about it. Everybody's afraid of something, even if they say they're not, or they try to put on a brave face. We're all afraid of something deep down inside.
Here's a weird thing when you're talking about that. I have a lot of tattoos, but I do not like needles.
Really?
Everyone says the same thing. They're like, what do you mean you don't like needles? I was like, there's a difference between getting a shot or getting my blood drawn or getting tattooed. And for having as many as I do, every time I go to get blood drawn, I have to look away because I will pass out.
Another interesting aspect of fear is how it's been, I guess, sort of commercialized and marketed to provide entertainment for people, obviously through movies and events and just all kinds of things these days. People are drawn to fear. Sure, there's things that terrify us, but that adrenaline rush that you get also can provide some form of joy.
People do it when they go to amusement parks, when you're going up on the top of a roller coaster and you get ready to drop, that fear of knowing you're getting ready to go over the edge. People go to haunted houses because they know someone's going to jump out at them. Like, people try and do things just to get that excitement because fear brings out the adrenaline and the excitement. So for some reason, people has grown to want to be scared.
You and I both come from podcast backgrounds, and we got to talking, and we thought, hey, let's talk about fear. Let's talk about all the things that we enjoy and all the things that scare people, and do that as a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings us to Planet Fear. They say it's safe to go back in the water, but history remembers otherwise. Before Hollywood gave us the monster lurking just beneath the waves, before that first iconic note of John Williams' theme ever sent chills down our spines, the terror was real. There's something about the ocean that unnerves us. It's vast, cold, indifferent. You can't see what's below you, but sometimes it can see you. In the summer of 1916, for 12 days, the Jersey Shore became a hunting ground. 5 different attacks, and a nation looking for answers, paralyzed by fear of something ancient, silent, and relentless. Decades later, Hollywood would turn that fear into a film, but the fear was already real. On this episode, we dive into what many think was the inspiration behind Jaws, and celebrate its 50th anniversary as a landmark film that made us all afraid to go back in the water. This is Planet Fear, and the ocean doesn't care if you're afraid. This is Planet Fear, the podcast that goes bump in the night. Boom. But first, follow us on social media at Planet Fear FM on Instagram and Facebook. And if you have your own scary story you'd like us to read, send it to us at planetfearfm@gmail.com. And now, let's get into the water. The deep water.
Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum.
I'm Matt. This is Brandon.
Yes.
Did you want to continue with the
bum, 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 bum?
Because I knew one of us were going to. We actually have to resort to doing it that way because otherwise this podcast will never see the light of day. That is apparently one of the most guarded pieces of audio in the world.
Mm-hmm. Of all things out there, you would not think the theme song that was originally believed to be a joke would be like Fort Knox of music.
Just those two notes, that's all it takes. And the impact that it has had on the world is nuts.
It's the most iconic two notes that people would recognize. I don't know if you can go dum dum and someone not instantly think of
Jaws.
That. It's the first thing that comes to mind is terror. The scariest two notes you'll ever hear is dum dum. For some reason, when I see a body of water, that song is stuck in the back of my head. I don't care if it's a swimming pool or if it's a lake or if it's a river or anything water. I take showers because I don't want to be in a bathtub because I'm afraid of something coming out of the water.
Yeah, maybe not bathtubs. Like I think Freddy did it for me with bathtubs, but not Jaws. Definitely swimming pools though, and other bodies of water.
The bodies of water in general are just creepy, especially the ocean. The ocean to me is like the world's biggest graveyard. Like think about all the tragedies that have happened on the water, all the dead people that have been out there, all the drownings, all the murders, all the other stuff that goes on in the oceans, and no one can ever find it because it's so vast. It's like the perfect place to take someone out just to get rid of them.
Because of Jaws, I have always been afraid of the ocean. I've never even been to the ocean. I live in a landlocked state. I have never seen the ocean with my own two eyes. And I have no interest or desire to ever do it. I don't want to get anywhere near the ocean because of the movie Jaws.
That's one of the first movies that I remember as a child that sticks out with me, and it was because I was terrified of it. I've been in the ocean before. Even as a little kid, I was in the ocean, and just about 7 years ago, I got in the Gulf of Mexico, and I was terrified of getting into it because I just kept thinking something's going to swim up and eat me.
Or you're going to get like stuck in the leg with a hypodermic needle.
Well, that too, but we were in crystal clear water, so I could actually see. So I wasn't as afraid, but I didn't go very far, which is usually the most common place where you'd actually get attacked by a shark. For anyone that's not familiar with that, most shark attacks happen like knee deep of water.
Right.
And that's about as deep as I went into it because, once you get out there too far, it's nope. Big nope.
Were you in like the Florida side of the Gulf?
Yes, Pensacola.
Yeah, because see, the Texas side is not crystal clear. It looks like a big old lake.
We have lakes here that I go out on a boat. I will not get in that water, even though it's just a lake. I still think there is something in the water.
I had to think back on this. I can't honestly say that I saw the first Jaws first. There was a lot of movies that came out whenever I was young where I would go back and watch the original because I'd start with the sequel just because of when they came out. And I remember specifically watching Jaws 3. My grandma was like the manager of an apartment complex, and I was staying the night over at her house. For whatever reason, Jaws 3 was on the television, and she let me watch it. And I was super young, man. And I remember that movie. It was actually Jaws 3D, but, on TV, you didn't have the 3D glasses or anything. That movie scared the shit out of me, man. Like, it terrified me. There is this one scene where this guy's shark-ravaged torso comes floating up and, like, bumping up against this glass. That did it for me, man. That was the most horrific thing I'd ever seen in my life at that point. And because of that, I was terrified for whatever reason. I don't know how I concocted this in my head, but now that I'm an adult, I've realized other people have this same phobia. The next day, whenever we went swimming, which was something I normally love to do, I was scared that for whatever reason, a trap door at the end of the swimming pool was going to open up and a shark was going to swim into the swimming pool and devour me.
The other day I saw a video, and it was actually from a game. A person was in a Olympic swimming pool, but there was a shark in it. And I don't know what the game was or anything about the game other than the fact it was like one of those little reels that was playing. I was like, why is there a shark in the pool? But that's the type of things that have happened because of this movie.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure no one thought about a shark in a pool up until this movie came out, which never even had a pool in it.
No.
But that's the fear that everyone got just from not knowing what's under the water.
I mean, a shark would instantly die in a swimming pool. Like all the chemicals and stuff would just kill it. How would, I guess, a supervillain? I don't know. Who would be able to construct a trapdoor in a swimming pool at an apartment complex and nobody notice? It's got to have some sort of holding tank. Like logically, ridiculous. But the thought was there from somewhere, have no idea where, and it never went away. And it followed me all through my life. Whenever we would go to the lake, same thing. Can't see in the water. Hate it. I hate water that I can't see in. Nobody's going to have a shark in a lake, right? That would be crazy. That would be unheard of. But nope, terrified every time going swimming, jumping off of a dock. No, don't like it. Don't like water where I can't see what's in it.
That's also the other creepy thing about the blackish or brackish or whatever they call that type of water. That is the perfect place for someone to actually drown somebody and get away with it because you don't know what's under there. So someone could have scuba gear on and swim up underneath someone's leg and just pull them under and then swim off and you wouldn't be known because we don't know what happened. They just drown.
Yeah, people drown all the time.
The shark parts, though, bull sharks are known to go in freshwater. There have been cases of freshwater incidents where bull sharks have been discovered, and they actually down in, I think it was the Mississippi River, they've been breeding.
Yeah, that's super scary. The idea of like man-eating sharks being in like fresh water, especially rivers that far up, they get way up in there. From the Gulf of Mexico or whatever, they come up the Mississippi River. That is nutso, man. Like, can't verify this, but as a kid, we have a river that runs through the city here. And it's a major gathering place for people. And I remember going down there as a little kid and watching people fish. There's like a big concrete area, not really a dock, but it was kind of out over the water where people would fish at. And I remember a guy catching like a little shark, like a small shark, like a baby shark. Doo, 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 doo. But I have no idea what kind of shark it was. I just remember vividly that he caught a shark and everybody was like gathered around him and like looking at it and everything. And we're nowhere near the ocean, man. Like that shark would have had to done all kinds of crazy stuff to get up here. And the fact that it was a baby, it had to have been bull sharks breeding.
I think it was a Monster Quest episode where they were talking about these bull sharks and they were more disturbed that they were finding baby sharks because if they're breeding in like fresh water, that means they've adapted to the fresh water. So the babies are surviving in fresh water. So that eventually means that they're going to migrate further into fresh water.
Well, they found piranhas in a lake in Missouri.
You think someone would catch piranha? I know you can buy them, but like, you think someone would be weird enough that they would get a bunch of piranha and just release them somewhere?
Yes. I mean, that's the only way they got into a lake in Missouri. Somebody had to have done it. I know you wanted to talk about this in a future episode, but isn't that something that you would put on the list of things that you were worried about as a kid that you found out were bullshit? Because like piranhas was a much bigger deal whenever I was a kid. The idea of if you go into piranha waters, they're just going to instantly devour you and rip you apart. But it's not really the case. And I've never really ran across any piranhas.
I've always thought that the piranhas were like pack feeders and they all like thousands of little bites chewing you up. That's the fear that I've always thought about. Again, it's just water. It doesn't matter if it's a shark, if it's a piranha or an alligator or anything like that. It's just the fact that there is something in the water that terrifies me.
So yeah, Jaws 50th anniversary. Pretty big deal, man. Very impactful movie. Would you consider Jaws a horror movie?
In the sense of what it actually had done to society, I think it's one of the biggest horror movies ever just because of the amount of people that were traumatized by it.
I was thinking about this earlier, and I definitely consider Jaws a horror movie, but I guess a lot of people don't, which I find stupid, but that's fine. I was thinking about it though, and I know that like you definitely have to have like Exorcist at the top of the list of like, you know, greatest horror movies of all time. Not on a personal level, but just in general. But man, I think Jaws has a strong argument for that spot.
What movie had more of an impact worldwide? Because not just in the fear aspect, but this movie was the first movie that launched the summer blockbusters that everyone knows about these days. It launched all of that. It was like the highest grossing movie up until Star Wars a couple years later. But a movie about a shark that you couldn't even see for majority of the movie because the equipment was malfunctioning.
Well, it even like started the whole like creature feature genre of movies too, which is crazy to think about.
Nature run amok. You had like grizzly after that, and you had alligator and all these other random
Piranha,
right?
Lake Placid. Before that, you had alligator. Did you ever see Alligator?
Yes. Alligator is a classic. That's also another fear about swimming pools because of that scene in Alligator.
The diving board?
Where they push the kid in the pool.
Yeah.
Why is it kids too? Because even with Jaws, the kid out on the raft, which, have you ever seen the deleted scene from that?
Yeah.
It's a lot more graphic than what made the movie.
Yeah, it's a lot worse.
People have not experienced Jaws because when you talk about it today with, especially I had to show my children this movie a few years back, it still has an impact. Like even 50 years later, people that watch that still, I don't know if it breeds that fear because I know a lot of the newer generation were all CGI'd out. You know what I mean? They want to see things that look all, you want to see the whole thing. They don't appreciate the suspense of not knowing what's under the water. And I think that's why the fear of the water is so prevalent with me, is because that movie didn't show you what was under the water half the time. The very opening scene, you just see a girl screaming and getting drug around at the top. You don't see what's underneath.
Oh, you see what's underneath, all right.
Funny story, or weird, just level with me here. I used to have a DVD player that you could actually zoom in with a remote control. And the scene where she's under the water, I started zooming in on the DVD, which made it bigger on the screen, and she is completely naked. And it is definitely the 1970s in that movie, which is weird to think that that was actually filmed and left in there and you could see everything, but they probably didn't think of technology being able to let an 18-year-old kid zoom into a DVD and see everything in its glory.
I just remember thinking, like, whenever she's running into the water and swimming out there to that buoy or whatever, just like, what kind of dumbass does that? Like, it's nighttime, it's the ocean. What are you doing? Why are you swimming out there, you weirdo?
Weren't they smoking the devil's lettuce?
I think so.
That is a warning. You should never do that because you're going to jump into an ocean and get eaten by a shark.
So what's even crazier than all of this to me, there was a rumor, which we'll get to that, but all of this stuff kind of has an origin in the United States. The shark attack origin, a series of events that happened in 1916, which, I mean, I guess I understand because it was 1916 and just thinking about technology and information and all that sort of thing. But it's kind of nuts to think that there was a time whenever people did not think that sharks were a danger.
Most of the people back then, at least from what I believe in, they all had sea monster stories.
Yeah.
A lot of those sea monsters were probably just whales, but we didn't know any better.
But I mean, surely people like in Hawaii and other places, I mean, they were well aware of sharks. And surely they knew that like sharks would attack you in the right conditions. So why was it considered something that just never happened? Like they literally said that at first they didn't even think sharks were responsible because they were like, yeah, sharks don't do that. Sharks don't bite people. The scientists of the time even thought sharks' bite power wasn't even like strong enough to really hurt a human.
Were they aware of the different type of sharks though?
Yeah. I mean, some of them. I mean, there's like, what, hundreds of different kinds of sharks?
Do they even know how old sharks get? Because don't they think like the Greenland shark or whatever are like hundreds of years old?
Yeah, the Greenland shark's like old as shit.
It's so weird to think about how old something can be. Like even like tortoises, and they're like, "Oh, this is like 300-year-old tortoise." Who the hell remembers when it was? Like, how'd they document that? How they kept it? Have they had it in captivity this entire time to know it's the same tortoise?
Yeah. There's like a turtle that like Steve Irwin owned that was also owned by like Charles Darwin.
Steve Irwin, completely off topic, but the way that dude went out, it was so depressing to me. Of all the ways that he could have died, that's the way it happened. Like, it's still weird, but I totally expected him to get eaten by a crocodile.
Yeah, or bitten by a black mamba. But no, just stingray out. That sucked, dude. At the height of his career, too.
Where is the stingray, though, in the friggin' water? It just shows you that it's not just sharks. There's lots of things in the water that will kill you.
So this whole thing, like I said, started back in 1916. The Jersey Shore, mind you. Jaws takes place around July 4th. All of this stuff started at July 1st. Every year on the 4th of July, I mean, it's just like pretty customary, at least in the United States, that's when shark attacks happen. Like, what? Why would you go swimming in the ocean around the 4th of July at this point?
Hot weather. Everyone wants to cool off. They get in the water, they get bit, and then they blame the shark, even though you just went into the shark's domain.
Yeah. So July 1st, 1916, at the Beach Haven Resort, this guy, Charles Van Zant, 23 of Philadelphia, went swimming with a dog. I don't know if it was his dog or just a dog on the beach, but he was out there playing with a dog in the water. Some people heard him yelling and thought he was yelling at the dog. He was actually being attacked by a shark at the time. A shark was biting his legs in the water. And so they ran out there and rescued him, a couple of guys, and they pulled him to shore. And they said that the shark was like following them back to shore, like still trying to get the dude. Poor Charles actually ended up bleeding out on like a hotel manager's desk. And that was the official first shark attack victim documented in the United States that anybody can recall, and started this whole thing. Unfortunately, it did not end there. There was also a lot of sightings of large sharks swimming off the coast of New Jersey around that same time, being reported by like ship captains and stuff, which I find kind of interesting. 5 days later, July 6th, at the resort town of Spring Lake, New Jersey, 45 miles north of Beach Haven, another Charles Bruder, 27, was about 130 yards offshore, and a shark bit his abdomen and severed his legs. After hearing screams, some lady nearby alerted a couple of lifeguards that she could see a canoe that was like red in color, like floating on the water, that had capsized. But they went out there and it was not a canoe. It was Charles, who had basically been bitten in half by a shark.
Apparently sharks have a thing for Charleses.
Yeah. If your name is Charles and it's the 4th of July, for the love of God, man, get out of the water.
Don't even get in the pool.
Don't even do it. 6 days later, July 12th, is whenever the crazy shit happens. Matawan Creek, near the town of Keyport, 30 miles north of Spring Lake. So we're going in a northerly direction here. Some kids went swimming in a creek, not the ocean. They're inshore. They're not in salt water. They're in fresh water. They've probably gone swimming here 100 times, local swimming hole. While they're in the water, they see what they described as an old black weather-beaten board or like a weathered log. And then a dorsal fin appeared, and they realized it was a shark. A young boy by the name of Lester Stillwell, age 11, fell victim to a shark attack in this freshwater creek. The boys ran for help. They found some people, some men who ran back and dove into the water. And a man by the name of Watson Stanley Fisher, age 24, found Lester's body in the water. And while he was trying to retrieve it, Watson, my dear Watson, was attacked by a shark.
Am I the only one that thinks it's ironic his name is Fisher?
No, I was just noticing that myself. But I mean, like, damn, what is going on? So then, just 30 minutes later, a half mile from the same dock that these boys were swimming off of, where all these attacks happened, just 30 minutes later, Joseph Dunn, age 14, was attacked by a shark. His friends actually played tug of war with his body against the shark, but they were able to get him out, and he actually survived the attack.
Now, the shark that did all of this, was it just the same shark, or was it never figured out?
Well, that's the thing. So I read that there was another captain of some kind or something that saw like an 8-foot long shark in the creek around that same time, but nobody believed him. And then this happened. You have all these shark attacks within a period of 12 days, and it's all kind of like following the same route going north or whatever. But now we do know a little bit more about sharks. So, I mean, is it even possible that it was the same shark? Because that's what everybody thought. I mean, they thought it was definitely like a road shark had done all this. Some crazed, murderous shark just went on a killing spree. But what are the odds of that actually happening?
Once they eat, they don't really eat right away again.
Yeah. And so this guy, he saw a shark in the creek. Those other captains said that they saw a bunch of sharks off the shore, large sharks or whatever. And I've seen those aerial shots where it shows like a school of like 100 sharks off of a beach. Terrifying. I think this just might have been like some freak incident where because of something going on with the climate or nature or ocean currents or something that we don't really know about because it was 1916. But I think the whole area might have just been flooded by sharks. And so you had people in the water around a high concentration of sharks that normally wouldn't be there. And so this happened. But I don't know because, I mean, it's all crazy. Like, I don't know.
I know there was a case in 31, that someone reported a shark all the way up in Illinois. That is a very far distance from any sort of ocean. That's a good at least 1,000 miles from the nearest ocean, I would think.
Well, again, in 1916, like people didn't really know that much. They weren't able to go out there and study them. But you did have like experts weighing in on it. And it was like a huge deal. It was like fully covered by the media. Shark hunts ensued. They were like offering rewards and stuff. And so people went out killing all these sharks. And there was a guy who, a couple guys, I believe, killed an 8-foot great white right around the mouth of this creek where it dumps into the ocean or whatever. And supposedly the shark had human remains inside of it. Now they said the human remains matched some of the victims or whatever. And this shark was, believed to be the culprit. But, I mean, there's no verification that those human remains were really there or that they matched the victims or that this shark was the culprit. But that's how it was presented. And there weren't any attacks after that shark was taken. But there was a bunch of sharks taken. It wasn't just that one. But there was so little known at the time that there were people... One guy even suggested that it was a sea turtle, not a shark at all, but like a sea turtle. And he like wrote a letter talking about how aggressive sea turtles are and how big they are and everything. Somebody else started the rumor that it was an orca, which again is crazy to me. But now that we know more about sharks, I think most people believe it was a bull shark, especially the one in the freshwater. But the debate's still going on. I mean, nobody can seem to agree about who the actual culprit was or what caused it or anything.
I wonder if it's possible for someone to find bull shark pups and release them in fresh water, like in a lake, if they would be able to survive. Because if they're breeding in fresh water, that means they've adapted to the fresh water already. Is my science working? Like, you know what I mean? It's like if they're going up in fresh water to breed, it's almost like salmon.
I've seen television shows where they've talked about bull sharks specifically in river systems and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And how it's typically in rivers that have higher salt content and everything. In this particular case, they even went back and checked out like the lunar cycles. And I guess at this time, there was a full moon going on or something whenever these attacks were happening, which doesn't make sense because they were within a span of 12 days. But at least the one in the freshwater happened during a full moon cycle. And they said that that would have caused the salinity of the water to be a lot higher. So it was completely possible, because of the depth of the creek and the salinity concentration, that it was a small great white. So they're just really wanting to put this on the great white.
It was a were shark. Full moon were shark.
But we're still, out. The jury is out on this.
But that incident is what influenced Peter Benchley.
Well, that's what I thought. But I found out that that is false.
Really?
Yeah. So on September 5th, 2001, the New York Times published an article about the shark attack scares, and basically said that like this group of scientists said that Jaws was inspired by the 1916 Jersey Shore shark attacks. But Benchley came forward and said that that wasn't true at all, and that he wasn't inspired by those attacks, even though he had like gone to Princeton or something. But he said his book was actually inspired because he used to visit Nantucket and would talk to lifeguards about shark attacks and stuff while he was there. And he was just kind of obsessed with shark attacks. And there was some guy that was featured in a documentary or a news story or something, who was a boat captain and caught like this huge great white, a couple 1,000 pounds or something. And that was the inspiration for Jaws. And that captain that had caught that shark was actually the inspiration behind Quint in the movie.
In the book, Jaws wasn't nearly as big as what the movie made it out to be. It was just a normal great white, I think. Like, it was obviously bigger, but it's not like, I think it was 25 feet in the movie. I think it was only supposed to be like 20 feet in the book, which they've documented as a deep blue or whatever its name is like that big. They've tagged it at one point.
Yeah.
So it's like a real life Jaws.
But in 1916, I read a quote from some, shark scientist or whatever talking about great whites. And he said something about like they can grow to be 40 feet long. And this was like a shark scientist of the time. So they didn't know what the hell they were talking about, man. Nothing like this had ever happened. Nobody knew that like sharks would attack humans. They were just running with all kinds of stories and information and theories and everything else. And it was just basically chaos. Like there was resort beaches that put up like steel fencing in the water and had like armed patrol boats going around trying to shoot sharks before they killed people. Like it was nuts, man. It like completely took over. So it's kind of, I don't know, ironic that it caused all of that panic and was so sensationalized. And then years later, in 1974, this Peter Benchley dude puts out this story, Jaws, and then a movie ensues. And after that movie, the same thing happened all over again. The movie Jaws caused people to react the same way. And they started like going out on these shark trophy hunts and killing sharks. And everybody wanted to pose with a picture of a shark. It was nuts just from this one movie.
I know he regretted it after the movie had gotten so successful for all the sharks that got needlessly killed because of the movie.
Yeah. He said he wouldn't write the book again today.
You know, and I have to find the quote, but when I was reading through this a couple months ago, he basically just wanted whatever they're going to pay him up front, so he didn't get royalties for that.
Yeah, he didn't get jack.
So he really got screwed on writing the movie and the book, and he just got like a lump sum, and the movie became huge and is still considered one of the biggest movies out there for like, again, like launching the summer blockbuster. And the dude that wrote the entire thing basically got nothing from it.
Yeah, he got a $7,500 advance for writing the book. I read that like 20 minutes before it was time to publish the book, like actually run it through the factory and the printing press and everything, it still didn't have a name. Like they couldn't decide on a name. And finally they just like went with Jaws because it was the only thing that was like short and kind of to the point. And it would fit on the cover of the book well because it was a short word and everything. But like just 20 minutes before production of the book and you still don't have a name. He even like put off writing the book until the publisher called him and was like, hey, if you don't give us the book, we need the $7,500 back. And he had already spent the money. So he went ahead and wrote the book.
There's a lot of things in that book that didn't make it into the movie, which I think was probably for the better. I've wanted to get the book and read it. I'm not one that reads a whole lot of books, so I kind of skimmed through things and I read like a Cliff Notes version of the book and just some of the things that happened in the book. I was like, well, that's weird.
I had a reprint of the book whenever I was little. And I know it was a reprint because it had like pictures in the middle from the movie. So I don't know if it was like, the screenplay or if it was the original novel with parts of the movie added in for illustrations or whatever. But at the time that I had it, I was still too young and too scared to read it all the way through. I started and like couldn't get past the first, attack or whatever.
From what I've always heard from everyone else that reads the novels from the movies, where they're never the same.
Yeah.
There's always different things added. Even like when they have a novel that's based on a movie, like they didn't write the book and then a movie came out, like they wrote a book specifically for the movie. They add certain things in the novels that don't always align with the movies. There's extra scenes added to the books.
Another thing that's kind of crazy about the book is Benchley wanted an illustration of like Amity Island. He wanted the perspective to be through the jaws of a shark. So you would have like this picture of Amity Island and then the frame would be the jaws of a shark. And it got vetoed down because they said it had too many sexual overtones.
How?
I guess there's this something I've never heard of, but some sort of image, symbol, something or other of basically a vagina with teeth. The sales manager said that that's what the cover reminded them of, like you were looking through a vagina with teeth and not the jaws of a shark. So they changed it to basically what it is now, but a different artist was actually hired to paint the cover than the original artist that painted the cover, which got used for the paperback and then later on the movie poster. But the original painting, the iconic painting that everybody's familiar with the big giant shark coming up underneath the woman swimming at the surface, the original painting was stolen and never recovered. And nobody knows who has it or anything. Can you imagine if that pops up on eBay? Like how much that would be worth?
It's probably going to pop up there now. What did you think about, I know you brushed on Jaws 3D. What did you think about the sequels? Like looking back at them now.
I didn't know at the time that Jaws 3D wasn't just part of the series. It was the most recent one. Jaws the Revenge hadn't come out yet.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, Jaws 2 is definitely a sequel that makes sense. Like it all fits for me. And then Jaws 3 just doesn't really fit. And then Jaws the Revenge, which is Jaws 4, ignores 3 altogether. They're like, nope, 3 never happened. And it just ties back into part 2, if that makes sense. It's kind of like the Halloween series.
Dennis Quaid played Mike.
Yeah.
And the other guy played Sean, which were the original kids in the movies.
Right. But Jaws the Revenge was like, that never happened.
Right. I think Jaws the Revenge was like the first one that really sticks out to me because I remember the beginning of that was the most traumatizing. That was honestly one of the scariest things I think in the whole series was the very beginning of Jaws the Revenge. The very beginning with him on the boat and its arms getting bit off.
Yeah.
For some reason, that just has always stuck with me.
Yeah. I like Jaws the Revenge. I liked all the Jaws movies.
The one thing about Jaws the Revenge that as an adult, because I watched it a couple of years ago and I was like, the hell? Doesn't the shark kind of make a noise?
I think so.
I feel like it roars and I'm like,
yeah.
I don't know if sharks have the capability of roaring, but I know it sounded like it did in that movie. But there's a lot of things in that movie that didn't make a whole lot of sense. And depending on the version of the movie you get, Mario Van Peebles doesn't live where he does live.
Well, I mean, okay, so it's Jaws the Revenge, but it's not the same shark.
Yeah.
And that's like, I guess if I'm going to find issue with Jaws, which to me just sounds like blasphemy at this point, but that's always been the hang up is, the classic, okay, well, you killed it in the last one, so now what? In each one, it's like different sharks, but it's still giant great white sharks going after the same family, which kind of, because of the size of the shark and because of this family seemingly targeted by these gigantic great whites, that to me kind of gives it a supernatural overtone, which puts it into the horror category.
I could be 100% off, but wasn't the shark in Jaws 3D supposed to be like 30-something feet long too?
Yeah, well, there's 2. There was like one shark, and then there was a bigger shark, which was huge. And then I think even in the second one, it was like a baby and a mother shark, or like maybe the mother of Jaws.
It's been a while since I've watched the second one, but I know there was like a scene in that one that messed with me as a kid because I wasn't expecting that one chick to get eaten. Like right after she saves the little boy and the shark just chomps.
Yeah. Well, that whole movie was just the classic. This is what happens to kids that don't obey their parents. You get attacked by a gigantic shark.
Which is why we don't go on the water, people. There is a story, and this is an actual real legend. Have you ever heard of the Black Demon? It is about a large black shark. It's in, is it the Baja? Between Mexico and California, that strip of water around where it comes down. Isn't that the Baja area?
I think so, the Baja Peninsula or whatever.
There has been a local legend for years of a giant black shark in there, and they've always referred to it as the Black Demon.
Have you ever seen his eyes? Like doll's eyes.
A movie came out a few years ago called The Black Demon. And apparently it's a terrible movie, which doesn't surprise me. But it got me thinking about why has no one else really ever talked about more shark horror stories? You know, like Jaws is the epitome of shark stories. And it's the movie that launched so many copycats. Orca. You know what's scarier than a shark? Probably a killer whale because they're a lot smarter.
Yeah.
They're even bigger. Obviously, I know there's been people that have been killed by them, especially like trainers. Has there ever been any documented cases of killer whales hunting people?
Not hunting, but definitely trying to sink boats. And I would assume that they did not have the humans' best interests at heart while they were trying to sink their boats.
We also had did some pretty heinous things to whales.
It's neither here nor there.
I think they still hunt whales, don't they?
I'm always team human, just for the record.
Yeah, I'm not.
I think you have to be like a member of a specific tribe or whatever, and you're allowed to hunt like one whale a year or something. It's very regulated. And like the people that are doing it aren't going out and just massacring whales, which is the issue. Remember that show? What was that show called?
Whale Wars.
The Greenpeace people like went out and tried to stop the whale ships from like Japan all the time.
Yeah, I think it was Whale Wars, and one of their boats got ran over. I remember that.
Yeah. That show is pretty crazy.
There is a story that I came across from the bowels of Reddit, and I feel like it is appropriate to talk about this because it is a line to the ocean. So this was submitted by a user named Stroke a Jeffrey. Interesting name. So if you know a Jeff out there, make sure to give him a good stroke.
Give him a good old stroke.
This says, I used to work as a camp counselor, lifeguard / deckhand on a mini cruiser liner that hosted a summer camp around the Catalina Island. There's no shortage of scary stuff on the water, so one of our goals for the campers was to, quote unquote, break your fears. And I used to give a ripping speech at night about how I've been scared of the dark, the heights, and open water, and if you want to get them over that, you gotta confront them, and I would proceed to swan dive off the 40-foot mast into an eerie black open water. First of all, before I finish, that's a big nope for me.
What? This guy would high dive at night into the ocean.
Yes. Off of the mast of the boat.
Okay, well, I have a new fear.
One night I gave the speech, and when the bioluminescence was slapping, anything that was bigger than a toaster would light up, and I swear you could see up to like 25 to 30 feet down, probably exaggerating, but it was really cool. I speeched, ran, dove, and as soon as I cleared the railing, I looked at the water below me and I saw a massive swoosh of bioluminescence directly where I was putting my face. Our boat was 127 foot long, and whatever this Leviathan was a little less than half the size of the boat. I felt very doomed, but low-key, a little okay to go out in style. I wasn't scared of being a snack as much as I was thinking I'm about to snap my neck on a whale calf or one of those giant manta rays. Usually I'd hit the water and all the kids would look overboard and yell some cheesy shit like, "That's how you break your fears." But this time, as soon as I figured I wasn't dead, I remembered that there was a giant squid seen around this area, and I was much less cool with getting blended up in a basketball-sized squid beak. I swam faster than Michael Phelps back to the boat, I swear. I think when I got back on and still said the punchline to the kids except for much sheepishly, "Remember kids, always spot your landings." So this is why you don't jump into the water, because there are giant things swimming under your boat. If the boat is 127 foot long and this thing's half the size of the boat, what in the hell is a 60 foot long thing swimming under your boat?
Yeah, what is that?
Was it a squid? Was it a whale? It didn't specify. He just seen something massively swimming under the boat as he went into the water.
Is it wrong of me to say if a gigantic sea monster tears you apart or eats you or whatever in that scenario, you kind of had it coming?
Anyone that wants to do a swan dive from a mast in the middle of darkness into a bio-illuminated ocean probably had it coming. I don't know how that's supposed to get kids not to be afraid of the water, because your story just terrified me even more of why I don't want to go in the water. Think about a 60 foot, like I obviously know whales are huge, but think about this 60 foot. That's bigger than a semi-truck. It's about the same length of like from the front to the end of a semi-truck roughly. That's a big animal, big fish.
Big something, anything that big can eat you.
Exactly. Now imagine if that was a squid. We do have giant squid, there's colossal squid. And to be 100% honest, no one knows how big those things actually get, because all the ones that they've found have been long, but they don't know the lifespan or how big they get because they're so far down that it's hard to study them. They didn't even get footage of a giant squid until 15 years ago?
Yeah, not too long ago.
Speaking of giant squid, there is another book by Peter Benchley called The Beast, which was about a giant squid, and there was also a movie made by that too.
Really?
Yep, I used to have it on video. It was a made-for-TV movie.
I was going to say, I'm going to guess it didn't do as well as Jaws.
No, there was actually another one too. He wrote a book called Great White, which is not about what you're thinking. It is about a humanoid shark. So when I said were shark earlier, kind of referenced what his other book was about called Great White, which is like a human experimented shark man. And they made a movie called Creature with Craig T. Nelson.
Coach?
Yep. And the lady that likes to get naked in Sex and the City, whatever her name was. I was going to call her Kim Kardashian, but I think it's Kim Cattrall. But she was a scientist and he was a scientist. And they were studying something down in around the Bahamas, I think it was. And it was all man-in-suit animatronic street sharks, which I always loved street sharks as a kid. So this thing was a walking humanoid shark.
I mean, there's been a couple of shark movies that were like, okay, since Jaws, but none of them have ever come anywhere close to Jaws.
I don't think the sequels hold up to the original Jaws. Like, they're good for their own entertainment values, but there's a lot of, I don't know what it is.
Well, no, they can't recapture the magic of like the total shit show that the original Jaws was. That was like the first movie that was ever filmed on like open water, and they just kept on, fucking up the sharks, and all of them wouldn't work properly, and it was just horrible. People were like seasick all the time.
Wasn't the guy that played Quint, Robert Shaw, drunk 99% of the time they were filming?
Yeah, his famous monologue speech, he was like drunk whenever he gave that, which is probably why it was so good.
He did it all in one take, didn't he?
Yeah. He was always like talking trash to Richard Dreyfuss at the time, who was, not a famous actor yet. And it was just all kinds of bad things.
Richard Dreyfuss would later on be in the next Spielberg movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Not Mr. Holland's Opus.
I've never watched that one. But I do remember What About Bob?
And can we just say the most important thing that was left out of the Jaws movie that should have made the cut?
If you're thinking what I'm about to say, then no, I don't think it should have been in the movie.
The torrid love affair?
No. They kind of alluded to it, though. If you remember in the movie, when he came over for dinner, and how she was smiling at him and laughing with him and everything.
You think a little footsie was going on under the table?
Maybe. There was like little flirting going on.
A little stroking Jeffrey?
In the book, though, she was really stroking the Jeffrey, or the Hooper, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. That was actually one of the rewrites in the book. Benchley had originally had a sex scene with Brody and his wife, and his publicist was like, no, have him bang Hooper instead.
Because then she felt bad and guilty and had to go back to him in the book, didn't she?
Yeah.
There was mafia ties to the book, too.
Yeah, like the seedy mayor who just like wanted to rake in the tourist dollars and wouldn't close the beaches actually owed money to the mob, and that's why he was doing it.
Everything in the 70s was owned by the mob, though. Like, at least that's what I think of when I think of the 70s. It just seems like when you think of the 70s, it's like all like even like the mob movies. like Casino and Goodfellas, like all that stuff was taking place usually in the 70s.
Yeah.
The way everything's been projected, like in movies, is the mob ran the 1970s. So it makes sense, I guess, the book would have the mob running the beaches. So did they ever specify where this imaginary city was, little town?
Amity Island.
Was it supposed to be like off the coast of New York, New Jersey, New York area?
It was kind of fashioned off Nantucket Island. The movie was filmed at Martha's Vineyard.
I always get Martha's Vineyard and Nova Scotia confused.
Two entirely different things.
Nova Scotia is in Canada.
Yeah.
Which I actually think that's where, completely off topic, but where they film Curse of Oak Island. That deserves its own episode.
Yeah.
Another reason why you should never get in the water, there is a sort of a parasitic fish that swims inside your pee hole. And when it gets in there, it spreads open like it's bones, like it's fins and stuff, but they're like almost spinish, and it spreads it open and it like claws its way into your urethra. This is why I don't get in the water.
And like the name of the fish translates to like the dick devil.
Probably.
I just made that up.
It would make sense. Did you ever play the Jaws game?
I don't know if I did or not.
Everyone said it is the hardest game for the Nintendo. And as I was a little child, I had this game and I somehow figured out how to beat it. And it's not very hard. You can beat the game probably within 10 to 15 minutes if you know what you're doing. Not the new one where you swim around as a shark and you eat people and whatever. Yeah, I tried to play that one and that was kind of lame.
Yeah, that one sucked.
But the old NES one where you were the little scuba diver.
Yeah.
You had to shoot the sharks and everything, and then Jaws would swim in and you had to shoot it enough. So if you were on the boat, you could drop bombs on the boat or on the shark from the boat. And then you get into the little scuba diver and you keep shooting him with your little harpoon. And then eventually it brings up a battle scene where the shark is swimming towards the front of your boat. Well, you had to time it to where when the shark got up close, you had to press the button to make it shoot up out of the water and spin. But if it spun, it had to have its belly facing you. And then you had to press, I think it was the B button, and up on the directional pad, it would actually shoot the front of the ship right through the belly of the shark. And you harpooned him like in the end of Jaws the Revenge.
I kind of remember that. I remember the game for sure, especially like the scuba part and the dropping the bombs.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny to me that there's like out there in the multiverse somewhere, a 7-year-old Brandon like playing Jaws, the video game, and like ramming a boat's mast through the belly of a shark.
So here's a funny story. I played that game here in the last probably 5 or so years ago because I had one of those emulators.
Yeah.
And you could play all the old school games, and I brought that game up just to play it, to beat it real quick, just to remember what it was like beating Jaws in a specific amount of time. Good old run-throughs.
Are you like the #1 rated Jaws speedrunner? Is that what you're saying?
I can't confirm or deny that.
We're going to need a bigger podcast.